It's
All
Saimah, right?
right. Yeah, you sound good. We are live and ready to go. Hello, everybody. I'm super excited. Today we have John Soforic with us, and he is the author of The Wealthy Gardener, which you guys have heard me talk about over and over again on my channel. John, how are you? I'm so excited to talk to you.
It's my pleasure, Saimah. I'm fantastic.
Awesome, awesome. And so let's just get right into it. You tell me about who are you, because you were somebody before you wrote this book, and you are not just the author of this book. So let's give everyone an idea of who we're talking to.
Sure. I was just born and raised in a small town outside of Pennsylvania. A small town, blue collar kid in the middle class. You know, we had not a lot. We had not a little. But we had everything we wanted. You know, we were just had a good upbringing. I was known as Dr. John most of my adult life, Saimah. I was known as Dr. John because I was a chiropractor. And the way I became a chiropractor is that my dad went to a chiropractor and he got better in one visit. I tagged along with him. And you would think this is where I found my way to help humanity, right?
Right.
But what really happened, to tell you the truth, is an 18-year-old kid goes with his dad, sees him fixed by a chiropractor, and I saw this boat in the backyard. And my eyes drifted from the boat to the chiropractor's part-time hours, from the part-time hours to the boat, back and forth. And then 6 years later, I'm a chiropractor. And that's truly the extent of my vocational guidance growing up. This is how it worked. And so I became a chiropractor. And there weren't a whole lot of boats and there weren't a whole lot of part-time hours in my life because I graduated with $200,000 worth of student debt. And it started off a hard struggle. By the age of 30, I had a family. I had two kids. I set a large goal at that point. I set a goal to be retired by the age of 50. I was hoping, well, not hoping, I set a clear goal to have $240,000 in passive income by my 50th birthday. And I went to battle for that for the next 20 years. I did that at the age of 49. I retired and I had $240,000 in passive income, at which point I wrote the book that you were so kind to share on your channel here. That was a process that took me 3 years, working 50 hours a week. I wrote it from my son. It became an Amazon bestseller. It was translated into foreign languages. It hit number 46 on Audible worldwide. And Penguin's taken it over, and here we are.
That's awesome. And in between all that, you kind of built yourself a little bit of a rental empire, should I say?
I did. That was probably when I speak of the battle between making the goal and earning the goal. Absolutely, I worked a normal job. You know, my clinic. I was Dr. John by day. I always say I was Dirty John on the other days, but my family tells me not to say that because it sounds like a pervert. And so I became like the real estate John. And so I was doing I was doing a couple different jobs. I was trying to earn my passive income. Being the passive income was my goal. Real estate was then the way to get there. And so absolutely, I had to go outside of my clinic into entrepreneurship to make that happen. Sure.
Nice. That's part of, I think, why I'm so excited to talk to you. And there's just so much information that I need to extract out of your brain today. and
Hi.
and I think what makes you so unique is the fact that you have sort of lived these multiple lives that a lot of people can relate to. You've had sort of that professional side where you've had that career, which a lot of people, I think, listening in on this have. Then you've had that business side where you created this rental business from nothing, which a lot of us who are Turo hosts definitely relate to that. So many of us have started with one car. I know with me personally, I started 5 years ago with a little bitty itty bitty smart car that I leased for $99 a month. I had like no money, and that was all I could get approved for because I was young and I had no credit. But they gave me a smart car for $99. And so that's kind of where I started. And so many people who are on Turo have similar stories to that. And then what I love is that you kind of took all that and wrapped it up into this book, which has been amazing. And, you know, actually this morning when I was out for my walk, or kind of what I learned in this book, Think Walks, and what I realized as I was thinking about it is, early on when I started my first business around 21, 22, someone had introduced me to Tony Robbins back then. And I remember reading and listening to the Tony Robbins audio CDs and thinking to myself, like, oh my God, this stuff is like gold. Do people not know about this? How is this information out there? And like, how is everyone not all over this? This is crazy. And I just remember being like sucked into this hole of Tony Robbins information. And I went down every single book he had, couldn't stop reading it. And it was just, it opened up my eyes. And ever since then, it's been a long while since I've come across something where I kind of had that same feeling. And I'm sure part of it could be where I am in my life today. But when I read this book, the thing that I loved most about it is that it kind of felt like this cohesive body of work, this sort of A through Z game plan / tool chest, just an all-encompassing body of work that applies to anyone, whether you have a job, a career, a business, or you're just trying to figure out what it is that you're trying to do. It had it all in there, and that's really what drew me to it. And so with that said, I think a lot of people will relate to this conversation that we're going to have because it is just so all-encompassing. And with that, I guess I'll just kind of lead into, right now, we are in some really crazy times. And for me personally, kind of like my first adult life crisis, I guess you could say, where I've personally have felt the financial impacts of what's going on. And I know so many people that are going to watch this video are in that same boat as me, especially fellow Turo hosts, fellow business owners. And prior to this, I know maybe 2008 was the most recent crisis before this, but I was a little too young for that. I was probably barely 18, so I didn't really feel the effects of it. So I don't know, with everything that's going on, what do you make of it? And you being still a business owner yourself, how do you deal with sort of what feels like a burden or anxiety on a daily basis of just not knowing what this is?
Well, keep in mind, I've been through, like you said, now I'm 55 years old. So if you take me back, I was working when we went through 1992. There was a recession there. I lost a lot of money in the 2000 bubble burst. I went through the 2008 like we all did. And so I'm kind of old hat at this, and so, yeah, I've been through these and I have myself prepared for this one. So it's really not such a burden for me. Keep in mind that sometimes these things waken you up. And if you pay attention, you'll be ready for the future because of what you're going through right now. That's certainly how it worked for me. But your question, I believe, is how do you maintain the mindset through the times of turbulence and anxiety and fear and unknowing, if I'm not mistaken? That's what you're asking,
yeah.
Right?
Not being able to really anticipate because it is just such a giant question mark.
And not being able to control. I think we all like that control. Like let's plot A, B, C, and D. Well, it doesn't always work that way, right? So what do you do when it doesn't? I could tell you this, Saimah, if I bring it back to one of the most instrumental times in my life, whenever I went through my understanding of mindset, I graduated as a chiropractor, and I graduated with $200,000 of debt, and I went straight into my own practice. On day one, I'm down $200,000. I have $10,000 of overhead. I don't have one patient, and it's go time. And I'm still just a kid. I'm 24 years old, and I'm just coming out of college. I'm not ready for this. I'm not really prepared. And I lived in fear for that first year. Fear, worry, scarcity. I didn't know how I was going to survive. I didn't know what the future held. Finally, it looks like I was going to not win in life. All the things that you're probably talking about right now. And during that time, I was lucky enough to have a patient that walked into my clinic. He was an older gentleman who used to be a pastor. And he came in, and he was what we would call today a life coach. and he had a counseling center across the street. He claimed to be into, helping people be successful. So long story short, I fix his back. He's a patient of mine. We get to be friends, and he offers me the chance to come to see him and to work with me to be more successful. And keep in mind, this is the time when I was just scared and I had nothing to lose. So I went across the street, and he would go through a session here, if we have enough time for this story here, because this really is instrumental to mindset for me. We went across the street there, and he would go through a process where I would sit down in a room. I would put headphones on like I have right now. We would talk about the clinic. We would talk about what's going on in life. We would talk about what does success look like for me next week. Next week. We're not talking about 10 years out. And I'd have to describe that to him. And it was hard to do because I was scared, what I would, not what you fear, but what do you see success to look like? So long story short, we would do this. He would go back into the other room. He would then speak through these headphones. I would visualize, imagine success next week while he's going through the process of talking to me. And that would be a typical session. We go week after week after week, okay? All I can tell you is what we did was we shifted the fear mindset over to like a confident mindset, a really strong mindset. And for me, the difference was I started to feel more sure of myself in the days. I started to lean on my vision of what I wanted more. And within 6 months, I had a whole new problem. I can tell you that my clinic was packed. I had nowhere to put people, nowhere to put patients. Ideas came to me, books came to me, people came into my life. Things happened that brought about success. And I had a choice. I could just stay fearful, or I could just stay, certain, like an absurd faith, the kind of faith that you have to walk onto a basketball court or a football field and be down 27 points and still win that game. That was the kind of faith. And so how do you do that? Well, there are ways to do that. You can go through affirmations. You can't control your mind. You can do things right now to make those things impactful. And one of the biggest challenges we have at these kind of times when we go through stress is that we fight resistance. We want to shrink and become small. And so what we really have to do is fight the resistance of starting things like you're doing, going for a walk, going for a run, setting your goals, doing the things, the starts that you don't want to do because you feel so small right now.
Right.
That's everything. That's critical during these times of stress, if you ask me.
So doing the small things is really interesting to kind of think of it in that way. And whenever the word fear comes up, the second word that follows in my mind personally is opportunity. Like, how do you leverage that fear and turn it into something that will provide opportunity and provide you a step forward? And I think that that's kind of like what you're saying, is that you have to really leverage these times in a way to kind of help you move forward. How does somebody kind of take that first step of kind of stepping out of fear and stepping into progression and moving forward?
I think there's sometimes there is a digestion period, like what are the principles we're talking about? If you have goals, and you're getting clear on your goals, and you have ambition, and you're clear on what you want in life, what are your choices? Really, that's what it comes down to. How do you move forward? Well, I'll tell you how I move forward. I look at my schedule, the principle of a weekly schedule. Impact activities is a principle of the book that's where the rubber meets the road. Everything we talk about is what are you doing to make impact in your life? Either you're doing something or you're doing nothing. I think that's where the confusion is. People can get so busy and do nothing that moves them forward. Ambitious people, the problem isn't, they're not sitting on the front porch smoking cigarettes. They're just so busy doing a million different things that they don't have time for anything that's important. And so sometimes we got to clear the shallows, clear the water, get rid of the shallow activities of our lives, and then move into impact and keep track of that impact, because we're just creatures of self-delusion. We think we're working harder than we are, myself included. There's stories where I had to get myself really straight on what I'm doing and tracking what I'm doing and tracking hours of what I'm doing. And then results really exploded for me. But there's always going to be time for action. And especially now when we're sitting around, people forget the action of reading. They forget the action of setting goals. They forget about the action of affirmations. They forget building themselves up. That, those are doing things. And so that's really, really important, the inner game.
What I think is interesting here is that you're somebody who you've seen sort of the light at the end of the tunnel, or of a tunnel at least. And I'm somebody, I feel like I'm somewhere kind of like in the middle. I know I'm on the path, but the path seems really long and I'm not quite sure when I'm going to see the end. And then, I have younger sisters and I have younger cousins who are early 20s, just kind of figuring out like getting a job and earning money. And one of the things that I really see them struggle with, which I struggle with as well even till today, but probably not to the extent as they do because they're still at just the very beginning of it, is really for them understanding, one, like what is purpose, and two, what their purpose is in the long run, in the grand scheme of things. And I really especially see that with my younger sister who, she recently landed a great job, but it's not necessarily one that she enjoys, but she likes that it pays well. And one of the things that she was saying to me yesterday was that, well, I don't exactly enjoy this job, and life is not all about work, and you got to enjoy life too. And she was like, I just don't know what to do next. And what I could kind of see missing from her is her lack of purpose. And she doesn't know what her purpose is, or even why she needs to have a purpose, let alone what her why is. So for people who are not even to the point of setting goals and kind of figuring out how to put them into action and work towards them, how does somebody go about figuring out what their purpose is? And what if it takes forever?
I would say, first of all, we take a little pressure off that question and say, you're asking like, what is a person's purpose in life? How about we say, what's our purpose in this stage of our life? Okay. Because I can tell you that I once went into chiropractic and now I was enthusiastic for that. Okay. And that kind of waned. And then I was enthusiastic to get into something else and that kind of waned. And I was enthusiastic for this. And what we find is we have changing purposes based on where we evolve into. Let's take the pressure off of finding the soulmate in work. Sometimes it puts a little much undue pressure on us, and it's not necessary. I think that right now, for your sister, for example, you might say that her purpose right now is to save money. Okay, I understand that she's not fulfilled, but you know what? You'll have a lot more options if you save money for that time when you have things figured out a little bit more. And so let's not forget that you do have that going on right now. And you're being, like you said, you're being paid well. That is a very powerful purpose that a lot of people don't have. A lot of people aren't saving money right now.
Right.
So that's not bad right there. I think in terms of the question you asked for fulfillment, I think there's one thing that's universal to all of us. We know of Abraham Maslow by the hierarchy of needs. We're all familiar with that. But he also talked about an instinct of us having meaning through providing service for the tribe. Giving back to the tribe and having impact for the tribe. That's something that we all need for fulfillment. It explains a lot. Like, why couldn't we just be happy sitting on a beach? It's not the way it works. But we do have that. He talks about an instinct like that. And that's kind of universal to us all. But then I think we get into individuality beyond that. Like, how big is your ambition? How big is her ambition? Like, what would satisfy my brother would not satisfy me. He had a lower ambition than I did. I would be bored with his life. He would be crazy with my life. Inclinations, what fascinates you? Inner values. What are the kind of things you need in your life or a part of you will die? We all have these different knacks and an inner voice. And if we take time to learn, what I always see in my own life, I've been doing this 30 years. I see a lot of people saying, well, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And it's a joke, but at the same time, it's kind of sad because they're not really looking. They're saying that, but how much time did they spend really studying careers, the options out there? Do you see them sitting down every day reading? No. None, not at all. It's just a lot easier to whine about it, so
Right.
yeah, I would say the learning curves are really big. You continually learn for yourself. Socrates said, know thyself. What he meant was know thyself so that you can choose pleasure, the things that you think that are going to cause you joy and happiness. And he assumed that we would rationally make those choices, but that was his purpose for knowing thyself. And so that's a lifetime thing, and it evolves and it changes. So that fulfillment thing isn't a lifetime sentence. Nothing's written in stone. It can change. Take the pressure off. What do you want right now? That's all.
So almost like compartmentalizing it within the moments of your life, I guess.
Look for a friend, not a soulmate, in this thing called work. Like, let's take the pressure off of this thing. Like, there's not one great pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's about right now. What problems do you want to choose for your job right now? Because there's going to be problems with every job.
Yeah.
What are you most suited to handling? Okay. And we start right there. And then we get really, really good at it. And we find that as we get more and more competent towards something, we start to feel a lot more fulfillment. We have more satisfaction. And that's a big word for me, satisfaction. You chase the things that give you satisfaction, and you run from things that give you dread. Those are the principles that I've always used in my own life, and which I include in the book, no doubt about it.
And, something that I was thinking about, and we had a chance to chat yesterday real quick, and it kind of spun me off into deeper thought about this, is kind of like what you're sharing right now. It takes certain actions and efforts, essentially, to kind of figure out certain things about yourself and your life and what direction you want to head into. And now more than ever, there is such an abundance of information. There are guides just like this book that can help you get there if you can sort of execute on the information that's there. So just in the same way that your book provides information, my YouTube channel provides information to Turo host and how to run a business. But I've always felt that there's for whatever reason, there is always this gap between information and execution. And the more I thought about it, I feel like it has a lot to do with behavior and identity. And I think even for myself, kind of going back to when I mentioned when I first discovered Tony Robbins around 21, 22, I spent all this time reading his books, and I'm sure a lot of people right now can relate to me. You have probably read many books and articles and watched YouTube videos, and you're like, wow, this information's great. And you get excited and you have this momentum. And then next thing you know, kind of before a couple years go by, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I never really executed on the things that I read. And I sort of had that realization too, like, man, if I would have just followed what I read and really put it into action, I probably would have been a little further than I am now, and probably would have saved myself some trouble and would have made better moves. And it totally relates to going through something like this crisis that we're in right now. I wish I was better prepared. I wish I was financially in a better position. I wish I had more options. And when I look back, I'm like, if I would have just executed better on everything that I read, I probably could have been positioned slightly better. But why? Why is that gap there? And what is that missing piece from executing the information that we read? And why do so many people face that issue? It seems like just such a common thing across the board.
Yeah, Jim Rohn, of course, is one of the masters of self-help and self-development. And he'd answer that real simple. He'd say, I'll tell you why people don't do something. It's easier not to do it.
Right.
He'd leave it on the floor right there. You know why people don't set goals? It's easier not to set goals. Why
Right.
people don't exercise? It's easier not to exercise. That's why. It's easier to not live intentionally. Yeah, it's easier to watch TV. It's easier. It's passive. He would say that. And that's the obvious observation that we see. It's almost, but I'm with you on this. In chiropractic, I always said, I never want to get into weight loss for the same reason you're asking this question right here. People will say, well, I might have a 400-pound patient walk in my door saying, I got back pain. I want to say, okay, how am I supposed to fix this? Because you're about 250 pounds overweight right now. So I didn't want to get into it because there's so much psychology involved in weight loss. And here I am talking about wealth building, and there's so much psychology involved in wealth building. It's all about behavior. It's all about performance. What you say is execution. No question. It's where the rubber meets the road. Show me your schedule. What are you doing? Don't just show me your schedule, because that's what you intend to do. Show me what you did when that schedule's over, when the day is over. That's what determines it. And why aren't we doing what we intend? That's what you're talking about here. So I see it drastically. Absolutely. And I tell you, this is that a lot of people think that you're a little obsessive when you're not like them. When
Right.
you're actually doing, when you're using your time, you'll be judged, and they like you to be kind of like them. So why? There's a snapback phenomenon. They call it the rubber band. You're right here, and then there's a rubber band on you, and as soon as you start to go further, it pulls that rubber band tighter, and you go further and tighter until you snap back. And that seems like it's all about the self-image. Like, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? That's a big one. It's like the person who's lost all the weight who won't throw out their fat clothes.
Right.
If you don't throw out your fat clothes, I can guarantee you, you're going to be in them later.
Yeah.
That's how that works. And it's the same thing with me. Like I grew up in the middle class. I grew up in, Catholic educations. So I come out at the age of 18. I look normal on the outside, but there's a lot of baggage inside that comes with you. And I'm thinking, well, a rich man can't get into heaven any more than a camel can fit through the eye of a needle. And love of money is the root of all evil. And what are these? These are money beliefs, And then, do I really believe I could be wealthy? And is wealth good to even want? Excess wealth when people are starving somewhere else. These are beliefs about money, So I can tell you from a practical standpoint, what I had to do was I had to deliberately take control of my self-image and say, yes, wealth is my way to impact the world. Yes, I can protect and provide for my family. I earn wealth through service to others. The more people I serve, the wealthier I get. All these good positives so that you're congruent with your goals. You have to be congruent. That's huge. And then, are you worthy? You have to convince yourself that you're worthy before you are. You have to, just like an athlete going into the Olympics, they have to consider themselves worthy before they win that gold medal. It's not a whole lot different. We're always fighting this inner game, and we can never get too healthy inside there. That's what I had to do before I could then earn the money. And I did over the course of my life. But all of my beliefs, there's a saying that man is belief expressed. Right. Man is belief expressed, right, by Quimby. Well, that's what it worked out to me. My beliefs became expressed. And I finally did have that $240,000 in net passive income. But boy, I sure had to believe it first.
So you touched upon something really interesting, which I was thinking about, and you talked about how you were raised, and you were raised with a certain background and almost these thoughts that are implanted into your mind. And I also had a very similar upbringing from a very conservative family, middle class. My parents built their business from nothing. And so, growing up, my parents were always very frugal with everything. And, oftentimes when I talk to people, one of the things that I notice is that a lot of people carry this baggage from their childhood, and it kind of just carries on into their adult life. And it's almost like they don't even realize that it's affected them so far into their adult life. Do you think that your childhood, or if you didn't have the greatest upbringing, how do you prevent that from affecting the way your life plays out in your adulthood?
Okay, you're going to touch on an area that makes me very unpopular with people, Saimah, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is what I told my kids, okay? My son once was in the backseat of my car, and he was in third grade. He says, "Dad, it's not fair. I should be starting on the basketball team, and they're starting other kids." And I said, "You know what, Mike? You're just not good enough." I said this I don't remember it. I do not remember saying that. He tells me about it. It made a big impression on him. I said, "I will help you get good enough. I'll go to the gym with you. I'll help you, okay? But right now, you are where you are because you're not good enough." Now, let me tell you another quick story. Whenever I was a junior in high school, I was a 30-point scorer in basketball when I was, my freshman, sophomore year. I sat the bench my entire junior year. The entire crowd thought the coach had it out for me. Everybody thought this was wrong. And there's only one person in that gym who didn't see it that way. And that was me. There's nothing empowering for me to believe it's some external result. It's due to something else. I have complete responsibility to make that job so clear to the coach that he doesn't have a decision, period. It's my fault. So you're saying, okay, now you're talking about cultural disadvantages. What if a person comes up? Well, okay, let's talk, because I come from a family where my mom and dad, when they started out, a trailer was too good for them. They started in a half trailer.
Wow.
A half trailer. All right. Let's cut it in half. And that's what they had. So that's where I came from. And so what am I going to do about it? That's the only question. Am I going to use that as an excuse, or am I going to learn to run faster? Am I going to just take responsibility? This is X. Like when you go into a park, you'll see a map that says with an X on it and a little arrow pointing to it. You are here. That's where you are, period. Now you can use that as your crutch throughout life. That's fine if you want to do that. I mean, you're going to spend the rest of your life making excuses, or you can say, what can I do about it? How can I get off this bench? How can I be a player that starts again? And that's what you got to do in life too. You can't just say, well, by God, I can't do this because look at me, poor me. No. You take advantage of it. You take control of your mind, no matter where you are. And people say, well, that's not fair. There's different economic. I get it. So what do you tell them? What are you going to tell that person with the economic disadvantage? Use it as an excuse if you want,
right.
Or accept this is where we are. Watch out for your inner circle, because usually when we're in an economic disadvantage culturally, watch out for the people you're hanging around, because they're usually disadvantaged as well. So watch out for their ideas. Watch out for your own beliefs about money. A lot of times when we come from a lower class of money, we have these disempowering beliefs like money is bad. Be really careful of that. And don't forget to learn. Man, you can learn your way out of anything. Education is the key to getting out of whatever your disadvantages. Learn your way out of it. That's what's critical.
Do you think that there are clues in our childhood that maybe speak to some of our strengths and sort of finding our path in adulthood? And I ask that because I'm about to turn 30, and I've really started becoming very aware of, what I'm good at, what natural inclinations I have. And it kind of even took me a really long time just to kind of build that awareness. And I find myself often thinking a lot about my childhood and thinking about, were there any clues in my childhood that also pointed to these things? Because you always hear these stories about, successful people who, when they were growing up, like they had lemonade stands, or, they were selling cards, baseball cards, or whatever it might be. So I always wonder if there are clues in our childhoods that speak to our futures.
I think so. I know so. And I think that sometimes we look for these big trumpet blaring moments that just aren't there. Okay. What I really believe in looking for is, where are you immersed? Where are you so fascinated that you're just not seeing time pass by? It doesn't mean you're that great at it, but what immerses you, what fascinates you, because your knacks will hang around your interests, period. So look there. It's the easiest place. Knack in life isn't always about what I can do great. It's what you can learn to do that's easier than others. It's not always about, what am I so great? I'm a great writer. No, wait a minute. Maybe you have a knack to become a great writer, but it's your job to hone the craft. What do you immerse in? That's really the thing. I can give you an example from my own childhood where this will give anybody an example that it doesn't come with a trumpet. I was just a guy that would track my statistics in Little League. I was in 4th or 5th grade. I'd make columns. I would do all this kind of stuff. I would keep track, just like on the back of a baseball card. Well, this was natural for me. This was fun. I could see my performance in numbers and rows. I could see how I could track that and how good am I doing. And then I started actually using it for my training. I tracked my hours training. Here I was a 4th or 5th grader. Well, it's kind of weird to all the friends, because I told them, and they think I'm an idiot, and they laugh and made fun of me and all this stuff. And so I stopped telling them about it. But that does have an application now to later in life, right? When I write a book and I have to write it, it took a lot of time for me to write that book. I have to track my hours of sitting in this chair right behind me, because otherwise I'll be deluded. I'll think I'm writing a book, but I'm not. So those kind of things can come back to you in your later life. People that call you stubborn as a kid are going to see that that's called determined as an adult. So what immerses you? What are you fascinated by? What do you like? Like, look for more subtleties, if you ask me, not like where the world crowned me champion. Like, that doesn't usually happen,
Yeah, that's such a good point, and I think a great message to anyone who's listening that maybe hasn't been able to find those clues, because I'm also a prime example of that. My whole life, I would always tell my parents, like, I have no talents. I didn't grow up playing sports. I wasn't that great in school. I mean, I was just average in really everything. I couldn't sing. I couldn't draw. Like, there was just really not that one thing that I was like good at, It's just not a single activity or talent or skill. And recently, my dad, who subscribes to my channel, a while back, he would mention how when I was younger, I would grab the video camera and just start recording, random stuff in the house with my sisters, and I would narrate kind of everything that was going on. And I had really forgotten about that. And, we have these VHS tapes that have that. And I was like, that's really interesting, because now in my adult life, I'm finding that I have somewhat of a natural inclination to kind of making videos and feeling comfortable with talking on video. And it was just when he had mentioned that, I was like, whoa, I never thought about that. I actually didn't even remember it. And so I was like, finally, a childhood clue. Like, I thought I didn't have anything. So I think just exactly like what you said, it was nothing that was blaringly obvious, no medals, no trophies. It was just kind of one of those things that hung in the background.
What I think too is the same as what we talked about before. They don't come at you. You only find answers by looking for them.
Right.
So how often does a person really sit down and think about this and try to, well, they might give it an hour, but come on, we're talking about something so important as what do I want to do with my life? I mean, spend some time with that, right? So I told you this yesterday on our pre-interview that I can guarantee you that you do have a knack for this video stuff. And I can guarantee you I don't. I'm a writer. Like this is painful to me. So I'm only here because you've honored me so much, and I really love your videos. But it is painful for me. I'm not a talker on a video, and so. But you come through the screen as authentic. You communicate well. There's no stammering. I think I was on a podcast about 2 months ago, and a guy asked me. He said, "Well, what do you like to do now that you're retired in your free time?" I said, "I like to take my walk for a dog." I mean, everybody's just quiet. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff I say on podcasts, right?
Yeah.
So, but no, I would definitely say that this is a knack for you. It's obvious to the rest of the world, and it's really cool to listen to you. So.
Oh, thank you. When you were younger, in your childhood, teenage years, kind of coming up, do you have early memories of having kind of these larger like wishes and dreams that may have that would sort of add up to why you went down the path that you went down and were able to accumulate wealth and build this life for yourself?
I think I did, Saimah. I always just felt, and maybe this is universal. I don't know, because I can only live in my body and know. But I always thought there was something extraordinary meant in the future. I always felt like that. And it was when I was a kid and I had no reason to believe so. I just never stopped believing that. I just kept it to myself, but I did think that there was something different. And it's funny now that I'll tell you an example. Once I wrote a book, and it's not that it's reached its level yet. I'm just starting here, right? But it's been translated into 3 different languages. And you should hear my friends here, back here. Oh, yeah, we always knew you when you were a dumbass, when you were 16 years old. We always knew you'd be like published in China. I don't have much support back here. I have orthodontist friends, and doctors, they used to say chiropractor, DC is the name for, the initials for chiropractor. They said, they always told me it stood for dumb chiropractor, and they jacked me about that all the time. And yeah, I did need to reach out. I always knew there was a book in me too. And I don't know how you know those things, but I'm fascinated by that topic. How do you know
Yeah.
what is unknowable? I always knew there was a book in me. Absolutely.
So interesting. And I feel that way as well about many things. And I think for anybody that's out there listening, the one major takeaway from all of this is just kind of bringing that awareness and really thinking. Thinking is so hard to do, and it's intensive and it's exhausting. But I think thinking, from what I've discovered, and tell me if you agree, is kind of like the thing that really just kind of starts opening doors for you and kind of connecting these dots and helps you sort of understand where you came from, where you are, where you're going, and just you kind of like fine tune yourself in a way.
So we talk about all these seven wonders of the world. My wife and I are at a stage of life where we can go to national parks now, and we take a week off, and we might go hiking up in Sedona, and she'll ask me strange questions like, "What do you think the mountains are saying to you?" Things like this. That I'm like, they're not saying nothing. They're just rocks. What are you talking about? But of course she means it more metaphorically. And what I cannot help but grasp is that these rocks, they can't think. There's no consciousness. There's the Niagara Falls. We go there and we put it on a pedestal as if it's the great wonder of the world. Who's observing that? The consciousness that we are.
Right.
You're talking about thinking? My God, man, that's the atomic power within a person. And if you don't use that, if you're using your consciousness to take a shower and make burgers at night, and that's the end of it, oh my God, you're missing the greatest wonder of mankind. That's the stuff. So yeah, do I sit down and think? My kids have seen me just the other day. I'm sitting here thinking. My daughter walks in the room, and it looks to her like I'm looking at the wall. What are you doing? I said, Kristen, it's called thinking, And Bill Gates used to do that. He used to go in of course we know Bill Gates, but his mother used to lose him in their big house. And she said, where are you? What were you doing? He says, I was thinking. That's doing something. We forget that. Yeah. And boy, I tell you what, that's the magic stuff. If you can clarify it with a goal. And I say that, like the inner wisdom that we have to clarify that with a goal. Our thinking, we have to clarify that with a goal. Because thinking can lead us down dark avenues if we're not clear. And so can that inner voice. We can marry terrible people if we don't have goals. So it's really important. We can harness this and use this if we choose to.
What would you say is the first step, and this might sound so weird, what would you say is the first step that someone could take to get themselves in the habit of thinking?
Let me say this, that I think that discontentment is a really powerful force in the human being's life. We always say, what is it that you get in touch with your discontentment? If you ask me, what are your financial fears? Like, this is what we're talking about right now in the climate. What's that? And then we talk about your dreams, but let's talk about the things that you want to avoid in your life. I was always motivated by improving my life because I didn't like the current condition. And so you won't hear this in a lot of self-help books because, they're written by people that want to sell to masses. I'm a warrior who came out of the war. I'm scarred and battered, but I won. You will find a lot of people motivated by financial fear. And you know what? Escaping that financial fear is a glorious goal. It's so much better. Money won't make you happy. Oh, yes, it will. It's better than worrying. If your condition is always worrying, that is a better state than being in financial worry. And so, yeah, I think the number one thing is getting in touch with what you don't like in your own life, and quit getting so busy that you have to actually make time for important things. Get in deep water, get out of the shallows. That's what I say.
Got it. And on that note, given these crazy times that we're in right now, and I think there's people in multiple positions right now. There are going to be a lot of people who have no choice but to start over. and they need to rebuild because they either lost their jobs or their businesses, and they just need to find a new way to start over. And then there are people who maybe haven't experienced very many effects of this crisis because they're positioned well, or the industries that they're in are not quite as effective, or they're able to work from home. So we kind of have people on extreme ends of the spectrum right now. And this really got me thinking about the 5-year crusade that you talked about. And also because I kind of like whole numbers. We're in 2020. And for the people starting over, you'll get yourself to 2025, which is a great way to kind of even just keep track of things. So for the people who are finding themselves in the position where they are going to have to start over or rebuild what they may have lost, what should they be thinking about? How could they kind of move forward from any devastation that they've experienced, especially financially?
Yeah. And this is where we get back to what we talked about yesterday. Having been in that war, it's not always pretty. There's people want to say right about now that this too shall pass, or that there's a silver lining around every cloud, and everything happens for a reason. And what I'm going to tell you is that sometimes life just sucks, and you have to deal with that suck for a while. The challenge sometimes is just to endure the pain. You have to be able to not get broken. People say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's not true. There are people who do get broken by things that don't kill them. So it's all about how you react to it. It's your job to not get broken. I can tell you in my life, there was a time I was close to broken. My worst financial calamity, I describe in the book, where it was just, my hair was actually falling out in patches. My outer eyebrows was coming. I was getting like bald on my eyebrows. And it was tough, man. I couldn't even sleep at night, not without some sort of a drug. So I met my physical capacity. I always thought I could take pain, but that was the time it crossed over from mental suffering into physical. So there are times when the goal is just not to die. And you know how you don't die? You strip away everything else that you have in your life. And there was, to me, I'll speak of this as if it was a lamp in my room. To me, it was physical. There's an inner light inside of us, and we can feel it most when we have nothing else in our lives. We get stripped away. I imagine it's like how the Man's Search for Meaning, those kind of books were written by people that have been so stripped away that they have nothing left but that inner light. And that inner light is love. And you have a family, and you have yourself, and you have your breath, and you have the next day. And it comes down to that basic part of life. And as long as you have that, you can rebuild. You can rebuild. I'm not saying it's going to be fun. Sometimes it's going to suck, but you can rebuild. And it's up to you not to let it destroy you. That's the key of a calamity like this. And then eventually you get to the point where you release yourself from your attachment. Like, we're so attached to what is. And the goal then is to let go. Okay, now I'm going to go forward with whatever comes my way. I can accept that. I'm no longer attached. And that's when you stop suffering. So it can get that elemental, but the law is that you're not going to die. You just will not die from this.
Right. Really interesting. And I think that for anyone who right now is thinking about how they're going to restart, or that they're going to restart, and hopefully thinking of it in a 5-year increment, like where do they see themselves 5 years from now, kind of planning out for that, reminded me of probably my most favorite chapter in the book. And that chapter was on intentions. And I feel like to even get started on that journey of planning out the next 5 years, which I'm finding myself personally in that position as well, because I started Turo about 5 years ago. And in the time that I did Turo, I thought a lot about what I ultimately wanted to do for my financial legacy. And given what just happened with our economy and the businesses, this was the perfect push to kind of catapult myself into getting into what I had thought about for so long. So I'm really getting ready for that 5-year crusade personally. And actually this morning I woke up and I reread that chapter on intentions, and I thought it was like the perfect thing that I needed to practice every single day. So maybe if you can speak on that a little bit for
Yeah.
anyone who's getting ready to go down that route.
You pick out the chapter where I just went through 3 foreclosures that didn't make money. I'm in the worst foreclosure of my life, the one that we actually called the Titanic because it was so bad that we said we'd have to raise this one off the bottom. I fired 2 contractors during this, 2 groups of contractors during this episode, and I'm in the building by myself late at night, and I'm covered in sweat, and there's dust all around me, and I have to get this tile out of a bathroom, and I'm doing it with a grinder, which, if anybody knows what a grinder is, it kicks up a lot of dust and it's sticking to my body, and I'm all alone, and I'm exhausted, and I take a knee, and I just sob. And you know what? People listening to that will think, oh, that's a low moment for him. And I'll tell you, that's not a low moment. That was maybe my greatest moment, because it's the time when you push yourself so far that you've given it all. There's nothing else to give. I knew it 100% was right there. I gave it all, and you're taking a knee, and yeah, you're at the end of your gas, mentally, physically, spiritually. That's not a weak moment, guys. That's called giving it all. That's a sacred effort. And that's actually a time I feel proud of. We came out of that one, and you talk about intention. How did I get myself wrapped around that? You can't stay sobbing. So how do you pull out of that? I went home. I made a flyer. I made a flyer of this house as it would be written when it was time to sell it. Okay, brand new everything, brand new hardwood floors, brand new showers, brand new. And I wrote the most luxurious flyer that would be used as a sales tool when it was all over. And I stuck this in my sauna. I have a sauna in my house here. And I'd look at that, and I would just get that intention in my mind over and over and over. Got through it all, long story short, and made $50,000. And that was the turning point for me. It then turned into a block of duplexes. It turned into an apartment. And that was the linchpin. Little did I know, when I was on my knees that day, that was the key. What will you do there? That's what defines your lives. Those moments right there. How do you react to that? Because some people don't. Some people are broken. And some people just cannot stop. And that's what you got to do. And in terms of 5 years, I'll tell you this. That's the hard stuff. It's always the 5 years. After 5 years, you just keep momentum. The 5 years are what make the changes in your life. From where you are to where you want to be. You can change everything in 5 years and have the momentum going by then. So I always say you get a new life every 5 years. And if you need proof of that, just look back 5 years and you'll see, Jesus, who was in my life? What was I doing? How old was I? What did I weigh? All these kind of things, 5 years ago, there's a lot of people in my life that are alive that aren't now, so there's a lot of things that happen. I was still in it all 5 years ago, just starting to write a book. And now it's, so yeah, intention, the vision that you hold in yourself, that's the stuff that keeps you moving forward. What is your vision?
So from kind of what you described about your own story, it seems like for so many people, even though these times on the outside, on the surface of it, seems like it's one of the worst times as an entire population that we're experiencing, it could also be for so many people the greatest opportunity to really set the path for the rest of your life for what you really want.
You can look back at this time with the pride of how you endured it. You will. You won't ever say it. You'll say, I never want to go through that ever again, right? You wish you were more prepared at the age of 30. There's seasons of wealth too. You have a younger crowd that's probably listening to you between the ages of 20 and 40, I'm assuming. So that's not quite the season to be wealthy yet. You're a lot better off than I was at 30.
Okay, so small technical glitch, but we're back, and we were about to go into the seasons of wealth, and you were going to share a thought on that.
I was going to share a thought on that, and I have to tell you, I'm really disappointed. I've gone through so much expense here for all my equipment. And Penguin, who bought my book, I consider them to be the ones that paid the thousands of dollars. And now you're telling me my iPhone is just as good. So thank you,
Yeah,
Saimah,
thank
for
you,
that.
Apple.
Okay. So no, I think I was trying to make a point that at 30, there are seasons of wealth in our lives, and that it's so important to sometimes keep perspective of what we should be and where we should be. And we're not all going to be like Steve Jobs, who at the age of 23 founds Apple. And sometimes it's just progress and steady. And what I see people go wrong is they're always looking at the harvest instead of the sowing. And getting to the great metaphor of sowing and reaping, and which I just milked extensively for my book, The Wealthy Gardener. It's just that if we can just focus on the sowing, the planting of the seeds every day, instead of what we're getting from that day, measure. I think it was Robert Louis Stevenson said, "Measure each day not by the harvest you reap, but the seeds that you plant." And that's so important. At the age of 30, we shouldn't be rich yet.
Right.
And I know that a lot of us think we should be. We're dissatisfied because we're not. And all it does is steal your joy. Just be happy with what you're worth. Planting the seeds, that's what you have to measure each day. That's what we talk about impact statistics. What are you doing that makes impact this day that matters? That's what you should be doing. And maybe wealth isn't going to happen until much, much later. And so I'm here to tell you that it's the process is part of the journey. I mean, the journey is part of the joy of it all. You'll look back and say that it was the conquering of those hard times that I'm proudest of. It was the price, not the prize. I'm glad to have financial freedom right now, but I've cherished the price we paid for it. That's it. So be patient. I always want to tell people, if I went back to tell my younger self something, be patient. Don't drive yourself nuts with impatience. It doesn't speed up the harvest. You can't stare at a seed and make it grow faster. It sounds ludicrous for a farmer, but we do that all the time. We just try to drive ourselves nuts, it seems. Be patient.
In the book, you described that there were 3 wealth seasons. The first one being between 0 and 30, age-wise, 30 to 60, which I think mostly everyone watching is sort of in their second wealth season that you said requires so much patience, and then 60 sort of onwards. And in the book, the wealthy gardener himself is in his third wealth season of life. What do you think he would say to people who are in their second season? You may have just answered it with the note of being patient. Is there anything else that he would go back and tell people going through the second season?
Absolutely. In fact, the book is a book of metaphors. It's a book of parables, right? And so Jimmy, who is the mentor or the mentee of the wealthy gardener, asks this same question because Jimmy's getting impatient. And the wealthy gardener brings him out to a big harvest in the fall and shows him and you should know this, Saimah, you read the book, But I know we're getting to the point here. He says, Jimmy, do you realize what caused this fall harvest here? And he says, what, the farmer just worked his ass off day and night? And the wealthy gardener laughs. Yeah, that's kind of it, but it's not the whole picture, is it? The farmer just did his job, and he trusted the seeds to grow. Don't forget that. All you can do is all you can do, but all you can do is enough. Trust the seeds to grow. It's one of the reasons I stuck with the metaphor of a gardener through this book. Gardeners are strange little creatures. They get this vision in their mind, and then they imagine what they want. They learn as much as they can, and then they get to work, and they stay working, and they work and work. But they don't have to do it all. They do trust that mysterious power in the background to make the seeds grow. And we have to stay there. I don't care if you believe in God or not, but that seed will grow. And you have to just not take it all upon yourself. Just trust it will grow. I can tell you can't plot wealth linear on a line like this. If you just keep going in the right direction, there will be opportunities ahead of you that you cannot predict right now. And those things are going to just catapult in exponential ways. That's how it worked for me. I couldn't have planned. I could have never plotted at A to B, but I did have the courage to set that goal at 30 just where you are, Saimah.
Right.
And my goal was at 30. I set a huge goal. I had no means. I didn't have the how yet. Don't worry about that. It's your time to dream, and don't how it down. Dream big. Why not? You know, think with the end in sight. Like I chose 240,000 for reasons. I wanted to have freedom. I wanted to have freedom without worries. I wanted to have freedom without worries and be able to grow my business later. So think about the end in mind, and that's the time to dream. And don't hold yourself back by some limited idea of how you'll get there. You can grow yourself. That's what's critical. Think
Right.
big. Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of grinding it out. There's a lot of planting seeds and putting in the work and thinking and really working your way through these seasons. For you, what was the fun part of it? Where did you have the most fun?
I love this. I love the process of actualization. So when you get an idea in your mind of what it looks like, and then you start to feel the direction, I can say that there's a joy to direction that you can only appreciate if you've experienced life without that direction. It fuels you, you know, when you're moving forward with direction and you're pursuing your goals and you're seeing things work. That to me was energizing, you know. I use the words like energizing or satisfying. You know, I think the pursuit of happiness is a really elusive thing. Uh, Fun, you know, I'm not sure. I would say that for me, buying a house, getting that house, beating all the pros, that was fun. Getting the house done, that was fun. But I would say that I pursued, you know, it's the pursuit of satisfaction that meant so much to me. And that's an emotion that you can catch. You can strike. You can grab that one and take them to the ground. You can earn emotion, and it feels just like happiness. I would say that's a lot safer base to be on. You know, aim for satisfaction, and you'll be happy, and you won't even know it. It's just that's one you can catch. If you try to catch happiness, man, it's elusive. It's the more you think about it, the less it happens. You know, am I happy now? That's how you get unhappy. But go after that satisfaction. I can tell you the process of conquering for me was process of winning. That was fun. That was satisfying.
Nice. I like
And
that.
the growth, you know, you have to grow yourself. Like right now, let's say that, like, I know you have big dreams. Well, set them so big that you have to grow. That's what's critical. Don't set something you could do right now. You know, have faith in yourself to grow,
Right.
learn, become more than you are right now. You know, that's important.
Definitely. And so I feel like in our conversation, we've sort of gone through this like full scope of things almost, where hopefully anyone that's watching this, you can find something of use, of value, no matter what part of your life you're in, what part of your journey you're in. So it's kind of a final thought. What parting message do you have with the audience, with everyone watching, that you think could be a really strong takeaway for them?
You know what I think is cool right now, because so like maybe things happen for a reason, and I have this cell phone in my hand now, right? I can actually move around. Let me show you where we are here. You see what's behind me?
Yeah.
So these are all quotes all over my walls, right? You can see those?
Yeah.
So that's what happens. Now if I turn it around here, these are quotes that happen all over my walls. That's part of the process. That's part of the process. Let me show you this. This is my center here, right? And this is my think. So if I turn it around, this is my wall, right?
Nice.
So those are all biographies I read along the way. This is a board what I wanted along the way. This is what happens when you do this. You learn a lot, you know?
Right.
And that's the process of what we're going through here. You know, this is the old book right over here. And so what I would say is, what's the parting lesson here is, it's your goals are not about what you get, but who you become. I mean, take a look at what we just looked at here. That was my life in terms of the archaeological dig of what I've learned over the years. In making the, if you want to be complacent in life, you have to be the same as you are right now. or you can grow yourself. So my lesson would be, take a look around. You grow yourself the way to what you need to get. That's what I believe. And The Wealthy Gardener for me was all these lessons all in one book wrapped around a fictional story. And this entire floor was one covered with all kind of 3x5s everywhere. You should have seen the story develop. It was nuts in here. And I was just scratching my head, and it taxed my capacity. I almost wasn't smart enough to write that book. So that's what I say.
It's really funny that you showed that. I'm going to attempt at moving my computer. It's going to be a little bit of a mess. But right there above my coffee machine, I have a little piece of paper printed out, and it's actually an excerpt from the book. And it was the excerpt from the chapter, The Wealthiest Gardener. And sort of those paragraphs, which I will gladly post in the description for everyone to read, because I just thought it was so powerful. The thought of setting your intentions and using your free hours every single day. And again, going back to how one of the first steps is like, you just have to become aware, and you have to remember to think. If you don't remember to think, like, how can you take the steps that you need to take? And so when I read the book, I printed that out because the coffee pot is the first place I go to in the morning. So usually when I have my coffee, I make sure I read that and remind myself to think about these things. And that's how I've been able to hold myself accountable and execute. We talk about that gap between information and execution, and I would get so frustrated with that all the time. And so finally I was like, hey, I need to start maybe doing physical things to like blatantly remind myself. And so aside from reminders on my phone, I did that, and it's been really cool because every morning I wake up, and when I come down here and get my coffee, I stand there for a second, takes a minute to read it, and it's like, boom, you start your day off on the right foot because you remember what you have to remember.
Remember what you have to remember. Isn't that the truth? In fact, Penguin, when they took over the book, they put that quote on the back jacket, The Wealthiest Gardener.
That's awesome. So cool. Well, John, thank you so much for doing this interview with me, and for the Turo host community that's on this channel, and for everyone else that tunes into this channel. And I guess on a final note, why don't you go ahead and tell people where they can find you, where they can find the book, any websites or social media that you might have.
I assume, Saimah, that you'll have a link below this that will send them wherever. So I'll make it easy and say, look at Saimah's link, and she'll send you over. And what I'll generally do is make a dedicated page for what we've spoken about today. And we'll bring it over there to the dedicated. I'll send you to the dedicated page, so that if a person wants to learn more about like a 5-year crusade, maybe that's new to them, or maybe life fulfillment's new to them, I'll have links on my website just for an educational website. I have nothing for sale. I'm a guy who wrote a book for his son, and so we'll link over to that page. How about that?
Awesome. I actually do have one last question for you.
Yeah.
Is there anything that maybe didn't make it into the book that kind of stays on your mind? Any golden nugget that you can drop us that maybe we didn't grab from the book?
It's not in the book.
Yeah.
No, Saimah, this might sound sad, but no. Did you ever hear of you're young, so you might not have ever heard of the movie The Thornbirds?
No.
Did you ever hear of that? So The Thornbirds is a great movie, but it's a long movie. But it's named after a parable, a legend of a bird who this bird once was born, and its whole life it was trying to find this thorn tree. And the whole life of the bird, the existence, was to one day find this thorn tree and sing its song. And so one day it did. It found the thorn tree, but when it found that thorn tree, it took one of the thorns, and it impaled the bird. And the bird sung the most beautiful song it could sing. Right? This is what the Thornbirds is about. And the whole world stopped, and even God smiled from above. And then it sung its song, and it died. Okay, and it sounds like a sad song, but it was really a moving song. And if you see it in the movie, then Tell That Tale, it's a tearjerker. But I sometimes think that we do have a song in us, and It's our job to sing it. And if that's the case, then The Wealthy Gardener is my song. And I left it on the table. I have nothing left. There's nothing left there except for me to talk about it, maybe, so that maybe somebody else hears that song and they can listen to it, and maybe it changes them, you know. But no, I left everything on the table there. There's nothing out.
Perfect. I love it. Well, thanks again, John. I think I've taken up enough of your time. And I'm excited for everyone to leave their comments down below. Let us know what you think. Let us know what questions you have. And again, you'll find all the details to the book and how to get in touch with John and the website down below. Once again, this was The Wealthy Gardener. I'm so happy to have you on the channel. I think that this was super valuable for myself personally and for so many people watching.
You wore me out. You told me your goal was to wear me. It's like 1 o'clock on a Friday. How am I supposed to get to work now?
Awesome. That was the goal, so I'm glad we accomplished it.
Thank you.
Awesome, John. Cool. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.